Hi everybody, this is Mark with Midwest Astro, and thanks for joining us today for a special event. This particular event is going to be one in which you can download my data, and then we're going to process this exclusively this time inside of just PixInsight. So make sure before you go any further, scroll down to the description and download the two files that I created from AstroPixelProcessor extracting HA and O3, and we're going to process a dual band image together step by step. So go ahead and do that, and we'll get started just after this. All right, so you've downloaded the files. We've got PixInsight loaded, ready to go. We have the two files, so let's take a look at what we've got. Okay, so you guys have just downloaded the data. You've opened up the FITS file inside of PixInsight. I generated these HA and O3 images as extracts from AstroPixelProcessor. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to come up to the top and I'm going to click the little monitor with the radiation looking button here for a STF auto stretch. And I'm going to do that on both of these. All right, so we have our two images. The only thing that I dislike here is with the L-Extreme, I had terrible halos, and especially with the O3 band. So we will try to work that out as we go. So the first thing that I do, because I told you in the first processing video, which I'll link here, that we do is we need to go to all processes. We're going to go to image integration. And then I'm going to pick these two files and open. You can't run this with only two files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a second O3 file. And that way we can then press the little circle. If you try to do it without it, it won't allow you to run it if you only do two images. So we're going to go ahead and do these three images here. All right, so now that that's done, I'm not going to use image integration, so I'm going to close it. The first thing that comes up here is this rejection low. Go ahead and close it. You don't need it. Then you're going to come to the integration image, and we're going to stretch that. So this is the equivalent of both images combined. Luminance. So I'm just going to call it luminance. Our HA layer is going to be just HA1 and O3 1. So now we've got our three images, but first what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out just a little bit on our luminance. I'm going to go to all processes, and we want dynamic crop. I'm going to click the reset button, make sure the box is on this image, and we're going to crop in just a little bit. As you saw, there really wasn't a ton of need to crop in, but I always do just because there's always a little bit of overlap. So then once we're done, we'll hit execute. So we'll drag it down here. I'll close this instance of it and drop it. Drag it and drop it. Drag it and drop it. So now you have three images that have been properly cropped, and they're going to be the exact same framing. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and minimize my two colors. Let's put those over here for now, and let's just focus on our luminance. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here just so I can see it. So now the first thing that I'm going to do here, and I've shown this process in the other video, we're going to go to background modelization, dynamic background extraction. We're going to click this little guy, and I'm going to expand. There we go. So I'm going to change this to say 2. I'm going to change the radius to 150. And then do 7 samples and generate. And now, if you remember, we're only going to remove the inside blocks. Normalize, discard, and replace. And we'll say check mark. Now to save this, we're going to click, hold, and drag and drop it into the back, and we'll go ahead and close dynamic background extraction. Now you could go through here. I'm going to just redo my stretch. There we go. You could go through here and you could try to place very accurate pinpoint spots for background modelization subtraction. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say process, all processes, automatic background extractor. Once that opens, I'm going to click the bottom drop down here. I'm going to say do subtraction. I am going to leave normalize unselected, but we will discard and replace the target image. Then we will click, hold, and drag the bottom left tab onto the image. Let it run. It'll go completely black. We're going to leave automatic background extractor open. So I'm going to minimize it for now and just leave it over here on the side because we are going to use it on these other images. So now we'll come back up to the top and we will do our screen transfer function. Now you can see a little bit more of that hydrogen starting to pop, some of these swirls in the background, so it's coming too. The next thing I'm going to do with this image is I'm going to run noise reduction. The easy processing suite, that is completely free. If you go to this website right here, it tells you exactly where to add it. So if you go to resources, updates, and repositories, and you copy this link into it, resources, updates, manage repositories, you will see that I have this one right here. You add that link by just simply saying add. Once you've done it, you click OK, and then you'll have to probably close out of PixInsight and come back in to then have, pardon me, if I can get that, script easy processing suite, and you can run all of these programs. Tell you what, let's mess with Decon. Let's see what Decon gives us. So once you click it, it's going to open up. Let's go ahead and create a new processed star mask, and this will take a few minutes to run. Okay, so it's run it, but you can see here that we've got a problem. We've got a massive star right here. We want to hit the inside core of this nebula, and then we've got this massive star here that haven't been included. The easiest thing that I've found to do is to just add this ellipsis, click, hold, and drag it to the area that you want to protect. We're going to make it just a little bit bigger. We'll drop it there. We're going to add another one. Only this one's going to be a little bit smaller. And we're going to add one more. Click, hold, and drag. And now where this really comes into main design effect is going to be with Newtonians and RCs when you have diffraction spikes and you don't want to touch those. So we're going to say add all to mask. Now you can see we got black spots. So what we're going to do is we're going to say dilate a little bit more. And what that'll do is it'll expand the general area. We're going to convolve, which should blur the edge just a little bit. And let's dilate once more. And we'll convolve once more. That way we have a little bit of a smoother edge. We have bigger black spots. The black spots mean it's protected, so Decon will not run on this. The next thing we're going to do is create a background mask. Now that that's done, we'll go to Deconvolution. We're going to click Generate PSF, which is Point Spread Function. It's basically the size of your stars at the end of the day. And it's measuring their roundness, maybe their oblong, whatever it may be, it's checking those. So with that, we'll leave these as is. And then I found sometimes it's better. Some people will start really high, like let's just do a hypothetical 120 pixel math. We're going to go to 7. And then let's evaluate. So it's going to run everything. It'll take a minute here. I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead, and it'll save you guys from waiting. I would not do this step just yet. Let's see what it actually gives us. All right, so we're just now getting back in. We're almost done. This is probably going to be overkill, but I just want to demonstrate if it is. And you know what? Maybe it turns out great. Let's see. By doing this, evaluate the easy decon, we can actually see what it is we're doing. So I don't like this for a couple reasons because it is so incredibly noisy and we've definitely over sharpened the background. Now, if you come up here to how to use easy decon, what we're going to look for in particular is if the image gets noisier, you can increase the wavelength strength. If it's over sharpened, we reduce the iterations. So that's where it really comes into effect here. We did a lot of iterations. So let's bump this down to maybe, let's do 45. 46 is fine. And let's run this one more time and see if that helps with a lot of this noise and over sharpening that we've introduced in the background. Okay, so let's see what this did for us. Will we see a difference in that background? And what we're effectively trying to do here is, if you deconvolute, it means you're trying to remove some of the blurriness. If you convolute, you're increasing the blurriness. So I'm actually okay with these settings. I think this background might be cleaned up a little bit with the noise reduction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take this down to 35. And I'm going to go ahead and just run easy decon now at this point. I think that's going to be fine with where we're at this point. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so as we're about to be done here again, we're trying to remove some of that blurriness from the images by sharpening. So I think this is okay. It's incredibly noisy, but what we can do is minimize everything. We're going to remove our integration frame, and I'm going to highlight all these, right click and say delete selected icons, and I'm going to click yes on everything. Ugh. Yeah, maybe. Yes, yes. So now what we can do is actually go back and see where we're at. Pixel math. Okay, so our dynamic crop, dynamic background extraction, automatic background extractor. Okay, so this is what we started with. Let me minimize this. I want to clone it. So this is what we started with here. So we can kind of zoom in. We can look at our background. We can look at the noise levels and see that it's kind of noisy. We can take a look at the Horsehead and look at it. So I think we're in a good spot now. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to run noise cleanup. What I usually do with my stuff is I have noise exterminator. That works wonderfully. So on this image, I'm going to go into script, easy processing, and denoise. And I'm just going to leave everything exactly as is. And I'm going to say evaluate. All right, so it is almost done, but as you can see, this has taken a really long time to run. I've got a really high-end PC, and it's still taken quite a few minutes to run just a view, right? We still have to actually execute it if we're happy with this. So what we'll do is we'll zoom in here, and we'll say, you know what, that really doesn't look all that bad. I think that's fairly decent. So now I'm going to run it, and it's going to redo everything. All right, so it is about done executing. So that has taken 5 minutes just to actually execute it. So we have our image now that has had noise reduction and deconvolution run on it. So now what we can do is we can look at doing a histogram transformation and actually stretch this data. So let's press F12 on our keyboards. Then we're going to go to Process, All Processes, Histogram Transformation. I'm going to make mine a little smaller because that's massive on this little monitor. Right here, we're going to press real-time preview, and we're going to reset it. And now we're only going to drag in the midpoint. I'm going to keep dragging that in. I forgot to tell you, you do need to click this check mark so we can actually see where the histogram line is. If you don't see that, click the check mark and it will come to you. So we'll execute that, and then we're going to reset. So now we're just going to keep dragging this, and let me make this a little bit smaller so we can see the whole image. So now we're going to drag that black point in, which the black point is this far one. And you can see right here we have just a tiny bit of gap between when it starts to go up and down. If I go back, that way it's a little bit farther away, you can see this. I'm going to drag it in right up until we start to touch that line before it starts to go vertical. Then we're going to grab our midpoint and let's pull it into about here. Okay, so when we look at that, that's looking pretty good. Let's pull in the white point just a little bit more. The midpoint, excuse me. And that's probably good right about there. And you can see it lines up where the peak of our histogram is about in this first column, this first vertical line here. It's a little lighter to see. This is a darker one. There's a light one, dark, light. And we're going to do this first one. So let's go ahead and close the preview. We'll minimize histogram transformation because we are going to use that again. So now with this is where having Star Exterminator is also a wonderful tool. Which, again, it is payware, unfortunately. The other option is to use StarNet, which is free. So if we open StarNet, and then what we can do is say create a star mask. Okay, so now that that is done running, let's just minimize StarNet. We'll put it over here on the side. And you can see it pull out our stars. Now, it didn't do a spectacular job at it. Sometimes it does a pretty poor job, especially with these really bright stars here. So now what I'm going to do is I want to boost the nebulosity in this image without touching my background, or in this case, those stars. To do that, I'm going to go to Process, All Processes. Let's find Range Selection. We'll do the preview, reset it, and we're going to drag in this lower limit till we get only our nebulosity, which is going to be right about here. We can double check that by looking at our image and seeing that that's going to be pretty close to where we're going to want to boost our nebulosity. So what we're going to do is let's increase our fuzziness to, let's say 30 is probably good. And our softness, we want to boost that a lot. Now that we've done those, you'll notice it kind of brings in those items a little bit tighter. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take this back to the left to expand those areas a little bit more. Now you can see right here, right along these edges here, and up here, we start to get some of that background back in. So I'm going to go back one, should be about 0.17. And we're going to call that good. We're going to execute by pressing the square. And then we're going to close our range selection and preview. Now, I don't want to boost these stars still, so that's going to be a problem. Especially this star right here that's inside of the nebulosity, which I think is going to be this area right about here, maybe? If we actually overlay it, we might be able to see. Yeah, so that's going to be this general area here where this dark spot is. We can confirm that by putting it back over the top. Yeah. So the dark spot's going to correlate to this dark spot right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to clone stamp those out because I don't want to touch those. So I'm going to go to Process, All Processes, Clone Stamp. Now remember, we have to press the reset button. Let's set this to be maybe 100. And our softness, let's pull that in just a little bit more. And then we have to go to the background because that's what we want to copy. And then you press and hold the Control key and then left click once. That sets your point. So now I'm going to hit this area right here first. So I'm going to go ahead and just click it, drag it until all of that star is gone because no, I'm not going to boost that nebulosity. Now with this star, if I click and drag over here, I'm going to start to get this background. Well, I want to take that out as well. So I'm going to click in this black space, and then I'm going to click right here. That way it sets my point, and then I'm going to remove it. And then just to make sure I don't hit any of this area that I don't want, let's get rid of it as well. And I'm going to have to do Control here, click here, and then clean up just that little bit. Same thing down here. I think I just did a little too much. So Control, click, and let's get rid of this. We don't want any of that to be updated. So now let's drag this over and let's see. So right here, I'm going to go control click right there, and I'm going to grab my mask so that way I can see. Don't let go, because as soon as you let go and drop it, you can't see the screen behind it. But if I drag it and click it and hold it, I can line up our horsehead areas there, and then we can see right where that star is. So it's going to be like right here. Let's click it. That's still going to be too much. Let's drop down our opacity a little bit, because we do want some of the surrounding area to boost, but not the star itself. So if we realign our horse heads about here, and we just keep an eye on where that star is, come down here, click, and it's about right there. So I'm going to be okay with this. I'm going to go ahead and say execute and close this clone mask. And this is our mask. Let's click, hold, drag it, and put it over to the side. And then we're going to minimize it. Let's also, because I don't really want to work with it right now, let's minimize our star mask. So now anything in red is not going to be touched, but we want to boost the nebulosity just a little bit in these other areas that aren't in red. You can see I hid most of that star, but not necessarily the surrounding areas. So we might get something a little wonky that maybe we have to mess with later, but that's okay for now. So let's go ahead and go to right click, go to mask and say show mask, because we don't want it to show it anymore. We know where it's at. We're going to go to, oh, look at that. It's already on our background. Histogram transformation. Let's click the preview. Let's click inside, and let's see if we can pull this white point in. Just a little bit, not a substantial amount. You can see the difference of just right here and right here. So do this. Right here at the bottom of the screen, you can see right where this line starts to really flatten out. Drag the white point, which is this far right one, to that point. And then say execute, reset. Let's go ahead and minimize histogram transformation and close the real-time preview. And I'm content with that right there. We're going to say remove mask. And for the sake of this video, I think that's probably pretty good. Let's just go with that. So now what we need to do is let's put our stars back in. Let's go to all processes. We're going to go down here to pixel math. Now we're going to say, I don't want to type this, so let's go to expression editor. Let's go to integration clone plus star mask, because that's what our stars are still contained in. Let's say okay. Click, hold, drag, and drop at the bottom here. And that'll put our stars back in. We're going to call the luminance good where it's at for right now. We might need to do stuff to it later, but let's just call that good for right now. So now we want to build a color image out of these. And the way we're going to do that is go to pixel math. We're going to uncheck this RGBK expression because we want to make these active up here. You see these are grayed out. I can't even click them. But as soon as I uncheck it, I can now do that. In this case, we want our red to be HA1. We want our green to be O3-1. Excuse me. We want our blue to be O3-1. And then our green, we're going to steal a little bit from each of the red and the blue. So we're going to say HA1 times 0.7, let's go 0.6 space plus O123-1 times 0.4. So you need to just make sure between the two, when you do the summation of them or add them together, you get 1. So 0.6 plus 0.4 is 1. So I'm taking 60% of my HA and mixing it with 40% of my O3 to make a synthetic green. From here, we'll open up destination. We're going to say create a new image. In the ID section, let's call this HOO. the color space, we're going to say RGB color, and believe if you click it, it won't work because you have to have at least one of those opened. Now we can click the square. We can minimize pixel math. We can minimize the HA, and then we can screen transfer function this by coming up to the top and doing it right here. And now you can see we have an HOO image. You can see this star is incredibly bright relative to everything else. So from here, we can then run our instance of DB extraction. We'll open it up by double clicking it, and we're going to say generate because I need these squares to be flush along the border. And then we're going to remove the insides again. So just click, delete, 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 click, delete, 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 click, delete, delete, delete. And then we'll just execute that. And we'll rerun screen transfer function. We'll go ahead and minimize this. Or excuse me, we'll go ahead and close this instance. And now we're going to do automatic background extraction. We're going to leave everything the same. Click, hold, drag and drop. It's going to go black screen. Once it's done, we're going to minimize. Then we're going to stretch this again. So now we can see with what we're working with. So now that we've done this, we can probably run some noise reduction, but I'm not going to because this won't be our final image. We're going to apply that luminance to this image. So I'm not worried about the noise in the color version just yet, and I'm going to show you why. So bear with me on that. We're going to skip noise reduction for now. So with this, let's go ahead and do a histogram transformation. So we'll click our preview. We'll click in here. We're going to boost the midtones, execute, reset, click, hold midtones, drag, drop, execute, reset. And then now we're going to bring in the black point to match up right where the histogram starts to go up. And then back it off just a little bit, bring in the midtones right until about here. And then let's bring in the black point just a little bit more to about here. And let's see. We're going to bring it in just a little bit farther than we did the luminance. So let's see. Let's see where I want to drop this. I think this is probably pretty good right here. So it's basically 3/4 of the way to this solid line. It's halfway between the two blocks here. And I'm going to call that fine right there. We'll close our preview, minimize histogram transformation. And then from this point, what I want to do is, let's go to script, utilities, color mask. Let's go with yellow. And then we're going to bump this up to 4. That way it blurs it a little bit for us. There we go. So you can see a lot of yellow in there. Then we're going to come back and go script, and let's do color mask, and let's see if we get any blue. We'll do 3 on that one. So because of where all that blue is, I don't really like it because that's all background blue. What I want is really right there. I don't know. Let's see if cyan comes up because I'm not going to modify that. Let's go utilities, color mask, and let's try cyan. If this doesn't work, we will do a range mask for that area. Okay. So let's come up here. Let's go to Process, All Processes, and then we're going to go to Range Selection. Let's go to the Preview, and let's reset. On the lower limit, pull it up, and we're going to keep our focus right here on this. This is the only thing we care about in this particular instance. So that's going to be not enough. Let's go ahead and bump our fuzziness up again to about 0.3. Let's smooth it out to about 28, and then now let's play with this. That's probably okay right here. Let's go with 21. And then let's execute. And close the range selection, close the preview. And now we're going to go back to clone stamp. So we'll go to Process, All Processes, Clone Stamp. Go ahead and reset. And then now let's pick by saying Control. We got our point, and just click beside it. And now the fun part is we've got to black out pretty much all of this image. But once we get a little farther away and we get enough black screen in here, because we know this area that I just clicked in, we know this area right here is going to have more blue than anything else because it is a reflection nebula. Let's actually bump our radius up. Well, let me do 300. What's the max it'll let me do? Maybe let me go up to 250. That's fine. So let's Control click, and then click and drag. And then this way we can get rid of a lot of area. And then let's click Control, click below it, and then we'll just go side to side. Okay, so I'm not going to tell you this is the best way to do it, but it's the way that I know how to do it. So I'm going to click the check mark to execute that and close our clone stamp. So we're going to call this set image HOO blue. So now what we can do is we can apply our yellow color mask because that's our hydrogen. It came out yellow as opposed to say green. Then I need to go to Processes, All Processes. I need to go to Curves Transformation. I'm going to make mine a little smaller here. Click the preview, reset the image, and now I'm going to boost our red and pull out our green. Where it will be the magic number. That's obviously too much. Let me reset because I don't like what I just did. So boost our reds. Boost them up here. Let's get rid of... let's leave our blue alone for now. Let's go green and decrease green. Pretty substantial amount, but I don't know if I want to take it that much. So let's do maybe here. It'll look kind of orange, and let's see what we need to do with our blue. That just makes it more orange. So leave blue. Let's go to execute. And now let's change. So if you come over here to the A component, we're going to boost our reds just a little bit by coming up. We'll go red, we'll boost here, and then boost here. And now, again, with this, what we're going to do is we're going to create a color image and then a detailed image. We don't really care so much about the detail with our color image, because at the end, what we're going to do is we're going to blur it, and then we'll put the luminance mask over that. So hang in there with me. We want more of a red than anything else with these colors. So we want to work that red in there, and we want to make sure that we're pretty content with the coloration of these. You know, we don't want to go crazy and do something like that, because we lose a lot of the coloring inside of the nebula to the left. So let's boost it a little bit, and let's pull out some green, maybe. Let's see, can we leave some green in the highlighted area to keep some contrast there? Let me reset green. So we'll pull it down here, and we'll boost it up here. And let's call that good for the hydrogen. I don't think I want to make it quite that red. We'll open up our blue mask, which is only going to be that little area there. We'll drop it on top. And let's give our reflection nebula a little bit of a blue boost. Maybe here, if we go to B component, we can pull down and make it a little more blue. And let's call that good there. So nothing too crazy with this coloring. You can do whatever you want to do here. You could leave it yellow if you want. You could make these colors whatever you truly want them to be. That's the nice thing about this. We'll leave this image just like we see here. Now what we're going to do is go into Process, All Processes. We're going to go to Convolution. I'm going to bump this up to about 5. And then I'm going to click, hold, drag, and drop. And that's going to blur this image. Now you can see before and after. So we've got a very blurry image. What we want, though, is that smooth color transformation. You can see how we smoothly move between colors. So I'm content with that. We'll minimize that down here. Curve transformation we'll put here. Then what we're going to do is, let's look at our luminance. And does this color... Yeah, I'd say it's probably fine. Okay. We're going to go to Process, All Processes, and we're going to go to LRGB. There we go, LRGB combination. We're going to unselect RG and B, because what we're going to do is we're going to put our luminance onto our color. Now, here's a little caveat when using this tool. If you decrease these values like so, in your final image over here, it will do the opposite of what you think. If I decrease the lightness here, one might think that it's going to decrease the lightness when I apply it. It's actually the opposite. It will brighten your image. If I decrease the saturation here, it will increase the saturation here. So just remember, it's backwards when you think about it. So let's reset these to 0.5 each. And then I know I've got a lot of saturation that I might need to add into this image. So we might have to bump this down to get some of the coloring back into it, and we might have to mess with our lightness. But let's see what we've got. Save this chrominance noise reduction until our very last step. Let's click, hold, drag, and drop, and just see what we get. Okay, so you see how it darkened the image, but we keep some of our colors. So let's lighten our image. To lighten, we actually decrease. And then let's add some more saturation than lightness. Then we'll go back, click, hold, drag, and drop. And that's not too terrible. I hate this star, but the rest of it's not looking too terrible. So let's do this. Let's go back. And let's look at our luminance here. Is there any opportunity to decrease this? Let's go create a range mask for that bright area. Do we have it still open? No. Let's go back to Process, All Processes, Range Selection, preview. Let's reset everything, and I just want that star. Should be the brightest thing in here. And that's monstrous. Let's increase here. Increase there. Let's say okay. Close range selection, close the preview, and once again, we're going to clone stamp. And it's just because this area is just so horrendous. So control, we'll click and we'll work with this left side first. We'll control click. And let's just go side to side to remove all this stuff we don't want to touch. And you don't have to do this with 99% of your targets. This is just unfortunate with this one star in this big image. So we'll get rid of that and there. Okay. And then we want to execute. Make sure you don't close it before you execute. Otherwise, it will just close and nothing you did will save. So let's go back to our luminance here. Let's go drop this on top. Now we know the mask has been applied because it's orange. I want to go to Curves, Transformation. I'm going to go to RGB. I'm going to go to Lightness first. Nope, that won't do anything. How about just RGB? I'll clean it up a little bit there. Let's execute that. Let's go to Histogram Transformation. Nope, don't click what I just clicked. Can we drag this out? No. So unfortunately, a lot of this is going to be maybe overexposure because that star and the surrounding pixels have been blown out. Which, you know, is fine. If we can't do anything, we can't do anything, right? So we did decrease it a little bit. So let's say remove mask and we'll minimize it again. We'll go back to RGB combination. Luminance is now maybe cleaned up a little bit and we'll drag it and drop it. Maybe too light. Let's go 7 and too much saturation. So let's go back and drop it in. Okay, and that might be about all we can do at this point. So let's go back. So we have a blurred image and add the chrominance noise checkbox and drag and drop. So here's the image we have at this point. What we're going to do is we want to boost some of those dark areas. So I'm going to come up here to this icon, which is going to be extract the CIEL, which is going to be your lightness, or we're basically going to create a lightness mask. I'm going to drop that onto the top. We're going to minimize this, put this up here. And now what we're going to do is go to histogram equalization. So process, all processes, local histogram equalization. So with this one, let's make this about 270. Let's say our amount is about 0.4. Let's change our bits to 10, and let's just see what we get. So we'll click, hold, drag, and drop it. This process will take a few minutes to run in most cases. All right, so you can see before and after. Kind of gives us a little more depth to the image. I'm going to go ahead and minimize that because I'm content with that. So what now we'll do is remove our mask and let's go to Script, Utilities, and Dark Structure Enhance. And we'll just run it as is. So now we can see before and after, before and after. So if we zoom into this area here, before and after, see how it just kind of makes some of those darker areas pop just a little bit. Same thing with the Horsehead. We're going to come over here and it pops. There are tools that are payware that can really help enhance this particular image a significant amount more. There are additional tools in there. You can do sharpening, you can do more noise reduction. But if you're just trying to get started in figuring out how to process your bicolor image out of the gates, this is a definite good start to getting there. So at this point, I'm just going to leave you with that. Go ahead and start practicing. The more you do this, the more comfortable you're going to be in manipulating some of these items. Everything that I showed you today is freeware. Once you've purchased PixInsight itself, of course. This is how you can process your one-shot color cameras. This is one of many workflows. Don't think that just because I do this is the best way. I went a completely different approach when I had first done this by leaving a lot of the yellow in. Natively, a hydrogen's not yellow, but I mean, end of the day, coloring is whatever you want it to be. I will leave this with you at this point. Thank you so much for joining. If you have questions or comments, please put those down in the comments below. If you're a new person to the channel, please subscribe. And then in the comments, let me know that you've subscribed and I'll give you a personal shout out. Until next time, clear skies, everybody. Thank you.